Cameras bear witness as one symbol of America's financial might burns, only to watch in horror as hijackers send a second deadly message to the United States.
And then, only half an hour later, another target, another city, this time the Pentagon, the military seat of the world's only remaining superpower.
And there was more to come. Plane number 4 goes down in rural Pennsylvania. Dozens of people killed. A nation, an entire world is stunned.
Hello, I'm Jim Clancy.
And I'm Colleen McEdwards at CNN Center. First, we want to bring you the latest right now on Tuesday's terrorist attacks in the United States. In New York City, it is 2 a.m. right now. Many lie dead where the World Trade Center lies in ruins. Some people trapped alive have been placing cell phone calls, we are told, quite possibly from the basement of that World Trade Center building. The combined death toll for New York, Washington, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania will be very high, we're told. President Bush saying earlier, thousands of people have been killed. In New York, search and rescue efforts have continued right through the night. Thus far, at least 2,000 victims treated for injuries. It was little more than 17 hours ago now that terrorists hijacked 4 commercial jets, crashing one of the airliners into the North Tower of New York's World Trade Center, a financial mecca there for decades. Then, only minutes later, slamming a second plane into the Trade Center South Tower. Obviously an extremely well-coordinated attack. Another jet into a section of Washington's Pentagon building, the military nerve center of the United States, causing a terrible fire there. And finally, the 4th aircraft into Pennsylvania's rural Somerset County. Those 3 attacks leaving behind a nightmare of horrendous proportion here.
The dimension will be very large. In terms of the people we're looking for, it's a couple of hundred firefighters and police officers, which is a staggering number. As far as the number of people in the building, that'll be in the thousands. But there's no way of knowing at this point, and we're going to keep praying and hoping that we save as many people as possible.
And in addition to the carnage, the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington effectively shut down both cities, suspended domestic flights at all U.S. airports. Those flights to be suspended, we're told, until tomorrow, at least around noontime. Jim?
Well, between 100 and 800 people are believed to have lost their lives when another suicide jetliner, if you want to call that, slammed into the Pentagon. 64 people were killed aboard the hijacked Boeing 757 as it plowed into the headquarters of the U.S. Defense Department. 24,000 people work at the Pentagon. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld was in his office at the very time of the impact. He briefly was helping out with the rescue operation. CNN national correspondent Bob Franklin will be joining us with more from the Pentagon in just a matter of a few minutes. All right, as we continue to cover the situation, we know that the 100 and 800 people were in the Pentagon. We know also that there were a number of people on board another aircraft that went down. We want to take a look at some of the events as they happened throughout the day, a tick-tock, if you will, of the events as they unfolded. Astonishing, many Americans, astonishing people all around the world as they watched the explosions, as they heard the events unfolding. Bill Hemmer giving us now a look back at the day the U.S. President. All right, we're going to go, I am told now we're going to go to New York. Garrick Utley is standing by there with some thoughts from the middle of the night in the city that never sleeps. Garrick?
Jim, the figures we've been able to report that have been more or less given to us by city officials here in terms of casualties really only concern city employees, firemen and policemen and women. 80 or more policemen and women believed to be missing and probably lost tragically. 300 and perhaps more than 300 members of the New York City Fire Department lost. 300 entire units, the elite rescue teams, number 1, rescue team number 2, rescue team number 4, were in the towers. They're disappeared, they're lost. Tonight, we see some of the first video coming out. The giant searchlights have been brought in, run on generators there in Lower Manhattan, around the area where the towers collapsed. Indeed, the third building collapsed in that neighborhood too earlier this evening. The rescue efforts are underway, but it's going to be a long, long process. And of course, when we look at this, the scene tonight, what we remember and what shocks us and touches us is that here in New York, it was a day that started really so peacefully.
It was such a beautiful morning. The air was clear over Manhattan, the sky a rich blue. The two twin towers stood tall, anchored in bedrock of granite, so secure, so unshakable. And then, we have seen smoke and destruction before, but we've never seen madness like this. Or catastrophe like this.
The tower just came down.
It was a morning when words could only begin to express the horror.
It was like a blizzard, but a blizzard that wasn't cold, a blizzard that had no wind. It was just hot.
There was an enormous fireball. There was fire, debris falling to the ground, and then just a whole kind of mushroom of smoke that sort of just billowed up.
We knew that some of what happened this morning, that there could be another attack on the World Trade Center as there was 8 years ago, that terrorists might attack the Pentagon and hijack commercial flights. But how could we imagine that all this could happen? That much of the government would be shut down, the capital of the United States evacuated, and the White House, that the president of the most powerful nation in the world would take evasive action for his own security. Across this nation, from airports closed down to home to workplace, we watched and tried to comprehend what we were seeing. It took time after the shock of the terror to digest the dimension of the human tragedy. We tried to imagine what those caught in the soaring towers, in the doomed planes in the Pentagon went through. Before the end, we can only wonder what happens next. The president vows action.
The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice.
Retaliation, even revenge, may feel sweet one day, but right now there are only the remnants of terror, the pain of the tragedy, and the tears.
And how do we handle those tears and the trauma tonight for the victims, their families in Washington and here in New York City? Frank Donahue is with the disaster relief units of the American Red Cross. You've been down there today. Tonight, there's the logistics. Housing people, how many?
Tonight we have about 13 shelters. The Greater New York Red Cross has 13 shelters open in Lower Manhattan.
These are for people in buildings in the endangered
that have been
area.
Evacuated, Battery Park, etc., where apartments, just people cannot return to that area tonight at all. It's too dangerous.
And you're feeding about 10,000 meals down there?
Working with the Salvation Army, feeding about 10,000 police and firefighters and disaster workers on the scene tonight.
These are the immediate problems. We've seen the medical problems, the scenes in the hospital, emotional problems, psychological counseling. You get involved in that too.
Absolutely.
Who does it and what do they do?
We have trained, certified volunteers that are certified psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers that are trained by the Red Cross that we have tonight that are working in Lower Manhattan, that are working at our center on Amsterdam, and that are working actually at LAX, at Boston's Logan Airport, at every airport where people were affected by today's disaster.
And what are the patterns? What are the key things these counselors, these therapists really can do?
Immediate assistance to people, to be there when they hear incredible news that someone that they love very much may well be in that rubble that we see behind us, and to be there to provide solace, to kind of provide direction to them, to help them make it through the first couple hours.
This is a psychological, emotional first aid,
absolutely,
if you will.
Absolutely.
What happens after tomorrow, or the day after, or next week with these people?
Red Cross's role is to be there, again, immediately on the scene, to provide that initial, that first aid, if you will. We'll begin to then refer people to their clergy, etc., and other kind of long-term help.
We see again the people in the wheelchair, the people on the gurneys today, and we can only think of those who are still under the rubble. You've been to Bosnia. You've been earthquakes in Turkey.
Turkey 2 years ago, the earthquake, and it's the same kind of eerie feeling when I came through the Holland Tunnel today from Philadelphia. And I got down there and listened to that sort of dead silence that you see, and to see relief workers and hundreds of firefighters just waiting to be called in to respond. I saw it in so many places, and now to see it in America, it's pretty shocking.
Shortages. We've heard about blood. Need blood?
Absolutely. 1-800-GIVE-LIFE. Every American could give blood. We never want our country to have a blood shortage again. This is a sign to all of us. We should never have a blood shortage in this nation.
And in a crisis like this situation we're going through tonight and we'll go through tomorrow, what are the other shortages? Not enough doctors, not enough ambulances, what?
Not enough volunteers, people to continue to provide relief. This operation will go on for many, many weeks. The folks in Battery Park and those neighborhoods are going to continue to need assistance. And Red Cross will be there tonight in other parts of New York responding to the regular disasters that you see. And so volunteers, blood, financial resources, all of those things are what Red Cross needs, and so many organizations like the Red Cross need to continue to be there when people need us.
Have we ever had this kind of a disaster calamity in the United States?
This is monumental.
Even more than the natural ones? The
Absolutely.
floods?
I mean, certainly the hurricanes, the floods, the things that we've seen in this country are devastating, and people are stunned, but this is overwhelming to think that this has been inflicted upon America by who knows who, but that in moments, what you saw in the beginning of the scene of how beautiful and serene New York was, and now look at this tonight.
And it'll be there tomorrow.
Absolutely.
For days to come. Frank Donahue of the Red Cross,
thank you so much, Garrett.
Back to you, Jim and Colleen.
All right, Garrett Cutley, thanks very much for that. Let's move now from New York to the seat of U.S. military defense, the Pentagon. At the Pentagon, the hijacked airliner that hit that building at 9:38 a.m. ignited a huge fire there. Firefighters battled that blaze all day to try to bring it under control. Now rescuers are searching for up to 800 missing people there. CNN's Bob Franken joins us now from the Pentagon with the very latest. Bob?
Colleen, let me put that figure in perspective if I could just a little bit. That is an estimate, a real wide-ranging estimate from one local fire chief who said there could be between 100 and 800 dead. That was just his estimate. Pentagon sources are saying that's probably wildly high, but they have been insistent that they were not going to release any casualties until the people who you see in back of me, the ones who have been watching this blaze throughout the evening, are in fact going to go into the building. You can see aerials that show just the magnitude of the damage that was done here, aerials that were shot by a Washington station, WTTG. You should understand this is a massively huge building, over 17 miles of corridors. About half of them, by the way, will be closed tomorrow because of concerns of structural damage, although officials here say they are insistent. They want to open this building and at least have some of the workers in to make a statement to the world that the U.S. military establishment has taken a hit, but it is not down. And as a matter of fact, already there's some preliminary planning going on for retaliation once the person or the organization or the nation that is going to be deemed responsible is identified. And there was quite a bit of work done in this building today, quite a few public appearances, including one by the ranking Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee, John Warner.
We call upon the entire world to step up and help, because terrorism is a common enemy to all, and we're in this together. The United States has borne the brunt, but who can be next? Step forward and let us hold accountable and punish those that have perpetrated this attack.
As I mentioned, the firefighters and the rescue people in the back here are in a holding pattern right now, waiting for the rest of the flames to go out. The plan is at daybreak to start peeling away the section that was hit by the airplane and to go in and see just how really serious the damage was inside. Damage, of course, that we can see is pretty much catastrophic. Colleen?
And Bob, do you have any more information about what was in that section of the damaged building? What kind of work went on there?
Well, actually, it was fortunate in a way in that none of the vital offices are located in that section. You had some Army offices here, you had some Navy offices here, but the Military Command Center, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the various secretaries, including, of course, Secretary Rumsfeld, were in other parts of the building. But as I mentioned, about half of the building is going to be closed tomorrow because of a concern not just in the direct area that was hit, but other areas there may have been structural damage which could make it fairly dangerous to be there. Colleen?
Understood. CNN's Bob Franken at the Pentagon. Thanks. Jim?
Colleen, we haven't talked as much about the fourth hijacked plane, United Airlines Flight 93. It crashed south of Pittsburgh in western Pennsylvania. Administration officials saying the presidential retreat at Camp David may have been the target. Now, David Mattingly joins us from the crash site with more on the investigation underway there. David?